On Life, Death, and Beyond, I'm honored to welcome Gemma, a holistic grief counselor and registered root cause therapy practitioner from Melbourne, Australia. Gemma works with people navigating many forms of grief, including loss, life transitions, emotional triggers, and unprocessed experiences, helping them to release trapped emotions and reconnect with self-love. You can learn more about her work at her website and other social media platforms such as Instagram, which will be listed in the description. Welcome, Gemma. Thank you for taking the time out to join us today, and it's great meeting you.
Thank you. Thanks, Laura.
You're welcome. And so a lot of people, I'm sure, know what you do and who you are, people that work with you and through the services that you offer. For those who aren't and are watching, can you give us a little bit of background on some of the topics and what you do and what brought you to the work?
Yeah, okay. So my name is Gemma. I'm 44 years old. I'm a mum of two. I live in Melbourne, Australia. I'm a grief counselor. So, I do everything holistically. So I help lighten the load of grief through like mind-body connection. So we work a lot somatically. I use modalities like root cause therapy and ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy. But the RCT is really great because it's kind of like regression. There's a lot of inner child work that comes up, and we just help to process and integrate, our feelings, emotions, thoughts, memories through those modalities. So I help clients in all aspects of grief. And that can look really like broad. It's not just like the passing of a loved one. It's also, it can look like miscarriage. It can look like betrayal, friendship endings, relationship ending, divorce, separation, illness, lots of things. Even like fertility struggles, like IVF. So look, what got me into this work was like through my life experiences, because I've had a lot of like grief things that have happened to me throughout my life, and I feel like it's almost destined. I was destined to just like fall into doing this work, which I'm very passionate about, and helping people kind of like assist them in their journey, on their grief journey, as holistically as possible. Of course, if someone needs extra help, then they have to be referred on, but a lot of the time it is possible to do it with the therapies that I use, and it really gives people like a deeper understanding of themselves, why they act the way they do, how to control those thoughts and not suppressing them, and just kind of working with them. So yeah, that's what I do.
Beautiful. Yeah. When I started looking into death doula work, and because I have a lot of background in different, I have like counseling degree, nutrition degree, and have helped people, since my awakening and the near-death experience. So I've been doing a lot of that, Reiki, healing, inner child work, not just with them, but for myself. And coming and bringing all that into death doula, part of it is, when they pass over, people are left with grief. And so I was like, okay, well, let me take a look at grief so I understand it and know it. And so that's when I crossed one of your videos that you were talking, and I was like, oh, well, let me, invite you on and have a little talk about it and share what you do, because it was really interesting and what you kind of have on your website, because there are different types of and my understanding is like you have different levels of grief, from like maybe sporadic to long term. It could be very small instances, or like very like overwhelming things of grief. So it varies, I think on the type and what it is. And if you don't mind, would you share a little bit about that?
About like
the different types.
The different types. Yeah, sure. So yes, I mean, it can affect everyone differently, like for example, you might find if someone's lost, say they've lost their pet, so they might have lost their dog or their cat, and it really just knocks them. Like it just sends them in a spiral, and it's, and people will be like, it's just a dog, it's just a cat. But it's not just a dog, it's not just a cat. It's so much more that's connected to that animal, and then just the feeling of loss. And probably that trauma is triggered secondary from something that's happened previously. So we have to be really mindful when it comes to because a lot of people compare it, right? And they're like, oh, my grief's bigger than yours, kind of thing. And it's like, well, you just don't know what's going on in people's lives. But yes, some things are easier, to deal with. Like, a friendship ending's really, really hard. But, the death of a parent or, say a child is going to be a lot bigger than that. It's there are varying forms, obviously. But yeah, so, lots of different on the spectrum of, grief. Betrayal is a big one, actually. I'm writing some stuff for I've got a new website going up in the new year, and there's I'm writing lots of different categories and courses for people. And betrayal is a big one. I find a lot of people, no matter what, when I see clients, the betrayal is a lot of betrayal, like that's underneath those layers, you peel away and you get to like a betrayal, which is a lack of, that's a trust that's been broken, right? So that's a lot to deal with as we go through. Obviously, we're dealing with grief, but then we're going through dealing with trauma and what's happened in the past. Miscarriage is huge. I mean, the statistics, they speak for themselves. I think in Australia, it's like 1 in 4, 1 in 3, 1 in 4 women that will miscarry before 12 weeks, that is. But that's a lot. So I see that a lot. And, depending on what your journey was like to get there can really affect how you process that as well. Things like illness, let's say illness in the family is really hard because it's that kind of, again, that anticipated grief. You don't know whether someone's going to be okay or not. And you got to put on a brave face for someone and everyone else. And you're trying to cherish every moment, but that they might be okay, they might not. No one knows. You're in limbo. It's a lot of like anticipated behaviors and emotions there. It's just so many. There's so much. I mean, I think the divorce is a big one because it's such a big life change. You're on your own. Retirement, where you're suddenly people just left in the house on their own. Their kids are gone, and they've kind of forgot their identity. They've lost their identity. There's just been so much about the kids. So yeah, I deal with. I've seen a lot of different situations, and most of the time it's completely, it's you can get a good result, to help that person on their healing journey to live a better, to live a more enriched life at the end of the day.
Yeah. And do you think it's like as you're working, do you think it has to do with like maybe our attachment to the situation that brings on the grief and the different levels of grief that we go through, or like our attachment to the relationship or how deep we are in that relationship?
Oh, absolutely. That's a really good question. Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, of course, because what's that famous saying? It says the harder you love, the harder your grief, or it's just if you love, yeah, I can't quite remember it now, but yes, of course, there's that attachment. It's will affect how you move forward, and it can be it's just, and that is like a lifelong journey for people. It's not just going to be how much your attachment was. So for example, it was your sibling, right? You're never going to get over that, yeah, but you will learn to integrate and with doing the work, and you have to do the work, you really do. With integrating, doing the work, you can live a really enriched, more fulfilled life, but that pain will always be there. but you've just learned to accept it, integrate it, process it, and then you find a new what's the word? You see things differently when you've gone through so many grief situations, or something really significant, especially very significant ones like spouse, parent, sibling, child, really big shifts like that. Your perspective will change, and you will make life changes. It is literally inevitable, and that is true because a lot of people have just put up with things, and they've just like, when something big like that happens, they're like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. My boundaries, they start inserting boundaries, they start protecting themselves, which is a natural human response in a grief situation, is to protect yourself. That's what your body does, right? Its main job is to keep you safe and protect yourself. People do have a huge, life review, if you like. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you say do the work, what is doing the work for them?
Yeah, I know, right? Because that goes around, like you hear about that all the time. It's like, people go, gotta do the work. And it's like, well, have you done the work? It's like, I sure have. Doing the work, like, okay, let's just break that down. Doing the work. First of all, I think doing the work is really just accepting of how you're feeling. Is that first of all? And then depending on your personality type, I think you just deep dive into just like, you find an area and you're just like, this makes sense to me, like that could be journaling, that could be meditation, that could be talking to people, that could be going to a support group, that could be like I say, journaling, like writing, that's talking to someone, talking to a therapist, trying different modalities. It's really getting a deeper understanding of yourself and how you perceive the world. That's how I kind of look at it. So do the work, go deep, go into yourself. And most people will, because there is that life review. There is that difference of perspective when something big happens. And go into oneself and just really finding out what really, that you're passionate about, how you're feeling, accepting that, not trying to suppress it, realizing that, you can't just push things under the carpet. You've actually got to deal with it head on. That's doing the work. It's having difficult moments. It's having difficult conversations. It's, it is just facing your fears to a certain degree, and you will get better at that as the time goes on. We're not asking people to shock themselves into like, I've got to face my, deepest, darkest shadows. And that's another part of it is, like shadow work, which is hugely important when you're doing the work, and going deeper into yourself. The shadow work is really important because you've got to learn to love all those kind of like not so great parts about your personality. I mean, look, we're a soul at the end of the day, but we have a personality in a human form. We've got this personality. We're here for the human experience. We've got this personality, you've got to learn to love yourself. And it's like, and that's all the different parts. Like, I know my shadow parts. I know that I've and I'm still continuing to do work on those. And like, I'll be on the phone to a friend and we'll be like having a bitch, and I'll be like, that's my shadow. And it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Like, so when we do the work on it, are we able to accept it better and be able to heal it? And then at some point it doesn't affect us as bad? Or will we always have that as far as grief goes?
yeah, look, it's a good question. Like, everyone's situation is so unique and everyone's so different. But look, to a degree, yes. I mean, you are going to be able to. I mean, it all depends who's like helping you, is like assisting you, right? Like, with the tools, what tools are you exposed to help you process certain things? So yeah, I do think that if you do the work, and you, whatever that might be, and it can start off really simple. It can start off really simple. That can just be like, just doing, like we'll do at the end, like just a 3-minute mindfulness meditation. And then you just get deeper and deeper. And then you sort of look up, that felt good, right? I got results from that. I feel good from that. oh my God, you write things down at the end and you think, wow, that makes sense. You know, yes, it will kind of, to, you know, everyone's different, but from what I've seen and what I've experienced, 9 times out of 10, people, when they do, you know, this kind of work, going into themselves, understanding themselves, you know, just on a deeper level, then yes, you can learn to cope with your whatever the situation that you're going through. So you learn different coping mechanisms as well. Like, we never ask people to forget, like try and suppress your grief. That is not what it's about at all. It's learning to just integrate it and accept it, and name what you're feeling, name the emotions, name where it is in your body that it's kind of showing up, and just, it's really all about connecting into your body. And it's not all up here. Like, it's not all in your head. This is a whole body experience, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then I know for myself, like going through like doing the inner child healing and the work, since my awakening and everything that I had to go through and process, changing and shifting the mindset around certain topics. Yeah, and that's why I was asking, because the things that would have bothered me a long time ago no longer bother me, like because I understand and can see it from a different perspective. And so I was wondering if it was the same for grief, or is it always still going to be an ongoing, scenario for people to go through? Yeah.
I think it's yes and no. So it's the perspective part is like 100%. So no matter what whatever big experience you've been through, and it's same in grief, right? You do, if you do the work, you do whatever it is that you want to do because you want to feel better, you want to get a deeper understanding and whatever. Your perspective will change. Most of the time it will change. If you got to want to do it as well, right? Your perspective will change. But then the problem is with grief is that it's not just going forward. Something will happen, like you might have a baby and it brings up everything again, and you're like, whoa, I'm going through this whole experience again where I've got to live through that grief of not having that parent there. Or you might have like it might have been like your sibling's big birthday and they're not here anymore, and it's just like, whoa, it's just another big thing to do. So you just kind of like feel like you're going to get set back, but you've gained these tools to help you see things from a different perspective, to be able to cope and manage those perceived setbacks a bit better,
Right, right. Yeah, and then I also noticed you do emotional work. On your website, you had I'm trying to think the name of it.
Emotion code.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So do you integrate that into your sessions?
Oh,
Or is that
absolutely.
separate?
Yeah. And yeah, 100%. No, it gets in there. So absolutely, because as much as I work with I do talkback therapy, of course, it's part of it, but not a lot of people want to, unpack everything, and want to keep saying it out loud, reconfirming everything that's happened can be quite re-traumatizing. So by doing the like regression work, inner child work is amazing. Like, wow. I mean, some of the inner child stuff that I did, I was like, whoa, like, wow, that came out of nowhere. And like,
Mhm.
and really
Yeah.
healing, like so healing. It just gives you so much deeper understanding of why that how you act and the way that you react, to certain things. But energy healing, yeah. So energy is a huge part of it, like massive, right? So once we go through all the regression, the talk back part, if people are really open to that as well, then I will bring in emotion code. So just find where, because we go through like a whole load of like limiting beliefs, which limiting beliefs that you're holding on in the body, right? Excuse me. And the emotion code is, so it's actually formulated by Dr. Bradley Nelson. You should look him up. Amazing. Like he's got an ebook, he's got books, he's got plenty of books actually, but I listened to part of his audio book, and so did my husband. Funny, my husband's like, he's he's cool with all this, like he's down with it. But I said, listen to this, listen to this ebook, this Bradley Nelson emotion. He listened to it and he's like, oh my God, it's really interesting. And he goes, it makes sense. I'm like, I know, it totally makes sense. So it's all about you use kinesiology basically. Some people don't use kinesiology. Some people use just like intuition to kind of tap into which emotion people are like holding on to. But generally you use kinesiology, whether that's muscle, however you want a muscle test basically. And you find out which emotion that person is reacting to and which ones they're storing in the body. And it's actually fascinating. And you can do this, of course, all remotely. Like you can do it with the permission on children. Like, for example, I've done it on my daughter, because she can get a little bit anxious around water and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, in a past life, she had some bad stuff happen with some water. I don't know what it was, but, and we steadily try and like clear it. And it's really interesting, the kind of like results that come out of this, right? And also really interesting about what emotions come up, because you just like, and it's like, I think he goes through like something like there's like 60 odd different emotions to kind of recognize where what you're feeling and what you've stored. And some of them that come up, you're like, wow. I mean, and to some clients, it comes up and I'm like, how does confusion fit into all this? And they're just like, that's exactly how I feel. And I'm like, really? Well, because, that's my primary, like, that's how I feel. Like, how did this happen kind of thing? I'm just so confused by it all. And I was like, well, I'm glad it came up, because unless I wouldn't have known that, but it came up for them. And it just gives people more understanding. Motion code, I'll use it, probably won't use it on the first session. I'll probably use it like 2 or 3 sessions in. It just gets people kind of used to the work. But you release, it's an energetic release, because the whole concept behind it is that the more you store these emotions, they become trapped and they can manifest, right? So manifest into like physical ailments. And this Dr. Bradley Nelson was talking about, like, he's a chiropractor, right? So he was and listen to some of his testimonies where he's had like clients come in where they think they're having a heart attack, and he's actually released like, this emotion, and it wasn't a heart attack at all. It was just literally trapped emotion. Yeah. So really interesting stuff.
Yeah. And some of the work that I've done, I've seen past lives, that were still holding on to, and things that I had to shift and heal as well, and it was affecting this life. And like the energy in
100%.
the body, it's like our body is a consciousness. It has its own, it's like a body consciousness. It holds everything, recording.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like there's no
Including our
doubt.
emotions.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's what I believe, and that's what I've kind of witnessed. That's what I truly believe, that that's what happens. But everyone's got their own, their own views on that, and that's okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And how do you see? Because I know, have you heard of Abraham Hicks and the emotional scale?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I haven't delved deep into it, but I've heard of him. Yeah.
So part of that is like if we're thinking a negative thought, then we'll have an emotion that matches it. And it can indicate that our thought is in not a positive one, but it's more of a negative one. And so based on that, our emotions will respond to our thoughts and things that we're thinking. So like when it comes to grief, it's understandable that when people think of their loved one that's passed, or, a relationship or trauma, whatever the case may be, that emotions surface, and from that way. Have you noticed like that as a part of it? Like if we're, going into thinking about those things, that will bring that up with grief.
Yeah, look, that is interesting, and I have heard of him, and I don't, like I said, I don't know too much about it, but just knowing about what I've dealt with personally, like I totally can resonate with that completely. And again, I think it's not about just like pretending everything's fantastic and that will match, but because you know your energy. If you, it's like that positive toxic positivity, right? It's like going around that everything's great, but if your body's not matching it, like it's just not going to be vibration, right? But I do believe if you're going to be thinking negative all the time, then you will have a negative like response. Like it will match, you know. So we have to kind of like catch ourselves, and that's part of shadow work, I think, is like catching ourselves when we're kind of being a bit negative and whatever. Is being like, no, like, you know, sometimes I even say to myself, I take that back.
Yeah. Yeah. I have done that too. Yeah.
We're human, right? We're human.
Yeah.
It's like what, you know, it's like I you can't apologize for it. It's just it's part of it, you know.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, you can definitely, you know, learn to be a better human. Is that, you know, that's for sure.
Yeah. 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 Cause like I notice myself sometimes and I'm trying to be more mindful, when things that I think when I'm paying attention to the thoughts that I'm thinking and the emotions arise along with it. And if I'm getting emotional over, okay, what am I thinking and what's causing me to think this thought that's or making it arise because, it's just trying to figure that out, I think. And is it really the experience or grief that we're going through, or is it the thought? I mean, I think a lot of it goes into that and trying to figure out where that's really coming from and what is the process that it's taking, if that makes sense.
Mm. Oh yeah, totally. And it, you know, do you know what? It sounds like you've done the work.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work. I've been doing work since 2010.
Amazing. Yeah, you can tell. And that's right? It is really about recognizing it, naming it, accepting it. Like, what can I do
Mhm.
differently? What's been overstepped here? What boundaries been crossed? Like, why is this emotion coming up? What can I learn from it? You know, all these different things. And like, you get better at it as the years go on, right? And it's like, it does make you more mindful as a human. And then, of course, there's just going to be times when people overstep those boundaries. And you're like, no, done, bye.
Mm.
Not dealing with
Yeah,
that anymore. So, and that's
yeah.
okay because you know you've learned enough to be like, no, this is I don't need that in my energy field. You know, I just don't need that around me. And that's why we have to, you know, insert boundaries and you know have that confidence to do that. And it's, you know, just recognizing it's a healthy boundary though, like you know, healthy boundaries, not being overbounding or underbounding, just like finding that, you know, middle ground of like healthy boundary that you can insert and be like, you know, you're interrupting my energetic life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do not accept it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's in like right now, especially with everything going on, it's like really intense at times, like for me when I go outside of the house and it's like I'm around people and whatever the situation may be, and it's like if you have to work, there's a lot of things that can trigger us. And I know a lot of those times, it helped me bring up things that I needed to look at, and so I'm both grateful and really not ungrateful for it. But
Yeah.
those are things that's there to trigger us. And I don't look at triggers, as a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because it helps us to see and pay attention,
Mm.
you know. So
Well, that's
yeah.
right. And that's that's
Mm-hmm.
that's right. It's like recognizing those triggers, like knowing what triggers you, like, and what can I learn from this? You know, what boundaries are being crossed, like why has this emotion come up? Like why is it affecting me so much? Um, and you know, and how are we going to react to that? Like, how are we going to react to that trigger? Like, are we going to react like I would have done 5 years ago? Or are we going to react like the healed version of me now? Are we going to we're going to have a reaction where it's going to move us towards the life that, you know, we want to live, or you know, or is it going to take us back again?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's really just about, you know, and again, just kind of, you know, by doing the work, you kind of recognize all these things so you can think about it a little bit more rationally. Really, all this kind of work definitely helps us in these situations so we can react in a kind of more mindful and a more what's the word, more kind of like authentic way. Like, you don't want to react badly to something, it's just we learn. It just gives us different coping mechanisms, by recognizing triggers, accepting feelings, processing them, integrating them. All these tools help us to get through, these grief processes, which, everyone's going to go through, at some point in their
Now,
lives.
while you were talking, you were mentioning the life review. Is that the same or different than what like a near-death experiencer would be having, as far as a life review?
I think when it comes to like the life review thing, like that is more like a life review from like the human perspective rather than the soul perspective. So I would say they're a little bit different, but I mean, there's a parallel, right? And it's really just, yeah, no, it's from a human perspective, that life review in the, you're here and you're fully, dealing with life. That life review would be different in the way that, you start to make changes because, you've kind of like had it up to here, it's certain people or certain actions, blah, blah, blah. Whereas like, from your NDE that, your life review there on a soul level is showing you like, what's happened and important moments in your life that have very like shaped you. But like, what was your life review like when you had an NDE?
So my life review basically, when I got to the other side and was looking at kind of like what people will talk about, in near-death experiencers as the screens, you get to see like how your life played out, what played into it, why you're working on what you're working on in this life, which is basically a result of possible past life experiences. Um, and it helped me to remember what this life was about and what I'm supposed to be doing in this life and the experiences that I'm having. And it helps me connect the dots and make sense of it. And though it may be similar to like what we would do in human once we're here and kind of revisit, certain parts of our lives, this is more like a whole overview of pretty much everything, in a nutshell, different things like that. But when I came back, I only remembered the bits and pieces of it. And then from there, once I started meditating, everything was starting to come back. And through my 10-year span of journey, healing, it kind of came up and I worked on it. So I also did a life review after I got back. And I was kind of doing a life review, basically what you do in like reviewing your life at certain intervals of your life, things kind of came up for me to look at. So I was kind of doing that here. And then I had one in near death experience, and then one after I did like an out of body journey with a life review.
Yeah, and really interesting, hey, with the regression work and like, past lives, because
Mhm.
I've done a few past lives regressions and it just blow me away. And I'm like, I've always been on the fence with it. Like, I'm like, do I believe it? I don't know. Like, it's just, there's so many questions, so many questions. But from the regression work that I've done in past lives, like a couple of them, I had two big ones, and just amazing. Like, it made so much sense about what I've actually brought into this life and what the way that I think and why I've thought like that. Because I've always thought to myself, why have I thought like that? Like, why? Like, there was just always been this. For one example, there's I. I've always thought, even from a really young age, I always thought I was going to have like 12 children, like, which is just insane because like that's insane.
Yeah.
But and I was like, and I was never like overly like, I want babies. I was never like that as a kid. I actually was quite the opposite. But for some reason, I always thought I'd have like a really huge family. And of course, I never did. And then I've got like two children now. But my past life was, I was this, I won't go into it in too much detail, but the person I was in my past life had like 12 or 13 children. And they would, all this information, like messages they had, was just, it really was so interesting that was coming through like subconsciously. I was like, wow, I'm
Mm.
glad I did this. Like, it makes so much sense. Like, there's so many messages that came through with that made so much sense as to like what I'm holding, what I've thought, my thought patterns.
Yeah, and for near-death experiences, they go through grief too. And though we have all the different kinds of grief, I think that's not one that's visited a lot because it can change and transform our lives. We're like different people or have different experiences when we come back. And, a lot of people lose, relationships, things that they owned, or their whole lives are changed and turned upside down. So people do go through the grieving process, with the near-death experience as well. So that's a whole different other part of, grieving that a lot of people don't really look at.
And that's really interesting because like I've not had any clients that have experienced that, but it makes total sense, like from what I've listened to from other people's like uh recollection of like NDEs, and that would make total sense about just having that experience on the other side and then having to come back into their body. So there's that grief aspect there. So yeah, really interesting. Again, I would say, I don't know, you tell me, but I'd say a part of that is, when you come back, it's been such a, big review, like a big life-changing experience. I mean, I think there will be from what I've listened to on other podcasts, these are people say, no one, people say like, no one believed me. Like, they're just like, this validation is not there. And it's like, people think they're making it up. And it's like, no, I'm not making it up. It really happened. Well, you can't not validate someone's, response, just because, you might not agree with it so much.
And you mentioned you had some experiences with grief throughout your journey. Can you go over some of those with us and kind of dive into that and how that um, has played out in your life?
Oh, yeah, wow. Okay, so there's a lot, but so, I mean, I'll touch on them. So, so for example, significant loved ones have passed away. So like just a lot of people, right? And this started happening at like a really young age. So when I was 5, I didn't know this, right? So this will just tie into the spiritual aspect. So when I was 5, I started noticing like spirit around me. So I was very, very conscious of spirit coming through, spirit around. But then I used to call it ghosts because I was 5 years old. So I said, there's a ghost, there's a ghost, there's a ghost, ghost. So my mom was freaking out, Gemma's talking about ghosts again, but I used to feel it and I almost see the energy, but it was more of a feeling. And that all started when I was 5. And then as I got older, I realized that actually my biological father had passed away when I was 5. So that was like, there's a whole big story to that as well. But then when I found that out, I was like, wow, the jigsaw puzzles just like totally all started like connecting. I was like, that would totally make sense. So lots of people have passed away over the years. I mean, significantly, like my mother when I was 20. I've got a younger sister. She's in California. She had an illness when she was 20, so it was a big moment to go through that. Luckily, she survived. So that thank God, or whoever you believe in, source, whatever you want to believe in, that she was meant to be here. Divorce. I've been divorced. Betrayals, long-term friendship endings, miscarriages, just life circumstances. When life circumstances is just one thing after another, and you're just like, oh my God, that there was a whole stage of that happening as well. I've done fertility journey, IVF, the whole grief aspect that goes with that, bringing up children without parents. There's a whole grief aspect to that as well. And like habitual relocation, like I moved from one side of the world to the other. I was young, I didn't realize, and then you kind of deal with that later. I don't regret it, but it's just it's a lot of like processing that goes with that. Especially situations that happen around that time as well. So like I said, it was just like one thing after another. So there's been a lot of experiences, and not just not just fixated on, loved ones passing away, which is awful in itself to have to cope with, but just all these other things on top of it. And it's just like it, you just feel like there's one bang, 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 bang. And you think to yourself, surely that's it now. Surely that's it. Are we done? Like, good.
Wow, yeah, and that kind of sounds kind of like what was happening to me, and I just call it the dark night of the soul because I don't know what else to call it. It was like one thing that hit after another, and then until I got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. And then that brought me to my near-death experience in surrendering my life, and it kind of just took off from there.
It's like, it's not for the faint-hearted. It's just a lot. It's a lot to deal with, and you've got to really make that mental decision of like, where are we going to go with this? We've got to really find that inner strength to want to like. And I had depression like 20 years ago. I suffered from depression 20 years ago, and that was massive because I didn't know what that was. No one spoke about it either. So I just thought I was going a bit crazy. Do you know what I mean? But it wasn't. And I did get better. But, you had to really dig deep to be like, I need to get out of this. Which way do we want to go? Do you want to go downwards or do you want to go upwards? And, thank goodness I chose upwards because I had to really kind of climb up there, because, look, I know I'm not knocking medication at all. It saves lives, but I didn't want to go down that route. I did kind of want it because I felt so shit. I felt so bad, but the doctor didn't give it to me, and it's probably that was the start of my natural health journey. That was the start of it all because I immediately went and got homeopathics, and then I started like healing that way. And you know what? It was good that they never gave me antidepressants that day because it started my homeopathic journey. And I'm not a homeopath, but I realized how well they work for me, and my body, the vibration works very, very well for me. I know everyone's different and it doesn't work for some, but it works for some better than others. But that's the first thing I did. I went straight from the doctor. It didn't give me antidepressants. I went straight to the health food shop, got some homeopathics, and 2 weeks later, big shift, big difference. So, I didn't want to have to do that, but I don't judge anyone for taking, antidepressants whatsoever because everyone's situation is different. You got to do what you got to do, to be able to get through the day. And, like you say, you might have, kids that you got to look after. You got to be there for them, right? I mean, at that time I didn't have children. I mean, it would be hard.
Yeah, and I decided to take the holistic path as well. And when I came back from the near-death experience, meditation, yoga showed up in my life very shortly after. And then I had a big emotional release, which talks about the body consciousness and what we were saying, like the body holds everything, and it's part of releasing it. And I went through a lot of healing starting from then.
Another one that, I mean, I'm not a breathwork facilitator, but I do incorporate some kind of like, rhythm of breath, whatever, into sessions. But when I did do a breathwork course, it was like a 5-day, just in your own time kind of thing. That was at the start of like really wanting to do the work, right? And I think my daughter was only like 6 months old. So I had like, I was going through being a new mom, first time mom, just tired, but also that grief aspect to raising children without, family or parents or whatever. And I'd done a breathwork course, and the anxiety it released that I didn't even know I was really holding, like I felt it come up and out. And afterwards I was like, oh, that was a lot. I was like, I felt that come out. It came down right from down in my belly and it came right up. I felt it come out and it released a lot of anxiety. It was actually, I would say it was very life-changing actually, because I hadn't done anything. But I always, I feel like I've always, and a lot of people do, they kind of live on this low level anxiety, like day to day,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always known it's kind of there, and I know how to mentally kind of deal with that. It doesn't really affect my life, not like when you have an anxiety attack or a panic attack, that's huge. But this low level really doesn't affect my life. It's just fear, of certain things. And this, just doing that breath work really helped to shift that. And I felt the immediate difference after. So there's lots of things you can do. It's just finding the ones that work for you.
Now, with taking the holistic path, do you feel like there was like a guidance there for you? Did you like tune into anything, intuitively for that to go into that versus going towards the medication and going on that path?
Yes, like absolutely, like 100%. So it was like, this is always kind of destined, right? Like, for example, like the spiritual aspect, like having been able to notice like the energy of spirit around me when I was a child. Like it was so significant, like it was so obvious. That's what I was feeling. And I could always tell that. And then as, life, as I got older, there was, what can I say? There was a moment where I kind of like suppressed it because I would say things as a child and my mum would be like, don't say that because people will think, they'll like, she said something like, oh, they'll lock you up if you say things, because it was like I was saying things that were true, like were coming true, so I kind of suppressed it then. And then as I got a bit older, and I was like, oh man, this has always been part of my life, like, no one's going to lock me up, that's ridiculous, and I just like held on to that kind of belief as a young child, like and just I don't necessarily, I say work with it. I feel like spirit is always there. There's always a guidance, and I listen to it. And I'm a big believer in there's no coincidence. There's the synchronicity, but I don't believe in like coincidence. It's always meant to happen. Like this is, you were meant to follow that path, or that was meant to happen, as in like a coincidence when someone might say, oh my God, this happened and then that happened. Like, is that a bit weird? And you're like, no, it's not weird. It's like spirit showing you something. There's something to learn from that, So I was always destined to go down this route. I just didn't get there. I didn't fully accept it until after I had my second child. So when I had my second child, it literally was like an awakening. So my son really like changed my body, like everything changed after I had my son. It was very, very, it's a big shift there. And after I had him, I was literally just thrown in. I feel like I was guided, just thrown into being authentically what I was always supposed to be doing. And I really listened to that as well. And I was like, no, I know the work I should be doing, and it is this, and that's what we're going to be. That's the way we're supposed to be going.
Oh my gosh, yes. When I know when from my own personal experience, when I didn't follow my intuition, my guidance, it didn't work out very well. Things happened that I didn't want to happen.
Right? Every single time. And you're like, there's like a force, there's an energy where it's like, you don't need to be doing that, right? And your body, you'll listen to it now, right? But there would have been a time years ago where you'd be like, no, it would be fine, it'd be okay. And then you do it and you're like, I should have trusted myself. Why did I do that for? Why? And now as you get older, you're just like, no, it is what it is. I trust my instinct. I trust who I am. I'm not doing that. It's not going to serve me. I'm trusting myself, my energy, everything. So yeah, and that's where you get a little bit better with age. It's like those boundaries you get put in. You're like, no, I know myself, and we're good.
Have you had any afterlife experiences with going through the loss of a loved one and the grief?
Yeah, no, it's yeah, okay. So yeah, plenty of interaction, plenty of signs, like so many actually. And for anyone that thinks like, you know, oh, I haven't had any signs, I just think, well, you've got to think of it like this. For a start, when you're deep in grief, like you don't see, you're not thinking clearly, okay? You are clouded. There's, you know, you're not seeing things for what they are. You'll miss a lot of signs as well, but that's just part of your grief journey. You're going to be, your mind's going to be different in the immediate onset of that happening. And time is different. You know, we have a physical time clock here. You know, from what I've gathered, it's totally different on that side. But yeah, so, and my mum didn't really show me signs for what I feel was like a really long time. That was just because I was going through my 20s and I was self-sabotaging and I was just like, whoa, you know. Of course I wasn't seeing anything. Of course I wasn't. I always had my gut instincts. Like I always had that. But I wasn't seeing things for really what they were. And that's fine because I was just getting through for the best that, you know, I could do at the time. So yeah, there's plenty of interactions. So I'll tell you one, and there's lots. This is one. So this is from, like, my mother actually saved my child's life from the other side, right? Sounds dramatic. It was, and like it was a big, I just remember thinking, wow, this is so real. Like, I don't care what anyone says. So I'd been down to the beach in the morning with my daughter. This is like 8 years ago. I was really tired. I was just standing there on the beach, and and I really felt the presence of my mother there on the beach. And I kind of looked up and I was like, in my head, I was like, I know you're there. I can actually feel you, but I'm just so tired right now. I just can't deal. And then I was driving around, so my daughter would fall asleep in the car. Anyway, I was part of a mother's group at the time, and we were supposed to meet up for coffee in a cafe, in a couple of days' time. So I was driving around and I was, you know, my daughter had fallen asleep and I kept getting these messages of change the cafe, don't go to that cafe, change the cafe. So when my daughter had fallen asleep, I just pulled over and I got the WhatsApp group up and I said, oh, hey, let's change the cafe, because it was a really strong message. Let's change the cafe. I don't like the coffee there. Let's go somewhere else. You know, I just made up whatever excuse to change the cafe. And they were like, yeah, no problem. See you at 10 o'clock, you know, on blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, cool. So that was done. A couple of days later, we go for coffee. And then at the time, we get a message come through the WhatsApp group as well. And they said, where did you guys go for coffee from someone else? They were like, where did you go for coffee in the end? Did you go to that cafe? And we were like, no, we changed it. We went somewhere else. They were like, well, thank God you did, because a car has just gone through the front window of that cafe. You know, and that cafe was a really small shop, like tiny, tiny, tiny. And they have like toys and stuff. Like at the time they had toys and books for kids in the window. Like we would have been sat in the window, you know?
Right.
So, and it would have been catastrophic. Like it was just this car just plowed straight into the front of it. And I was like, no, we changed the location. And they were like, well, have a look at this kind of thing. I was like, oh my God. I was like, that is just unbelievable. I was just like, wow, like, I'm so glad I listened to these signs, you know? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, there's been so many, what people would say like coincidences, okay? So lots of coincidences, but I think for anyone that kind of deals with energy and works with energy as well, like when my mother passed away, I wasn't working with energy. I just had gut instinct. You know, I was 20 years old. I wasn't into all that then, really. I just knew gut instinct and psychic work. I didn't know anything else. And when she passed away, I literally, as I found out, I walked upstairs and I saw her in her bed, and I could see she was just a shell. That her body that was there was like, and the first thing word that came to my head was like carcass. That is just her shell. And I could see like this energy coming out and going up. And I was like, well, that is just, that body there really isn't anything anymore. That was just the shell that she was in, you know? And I could see this kind of like, I can't even explain it. It was a really surreal moment. I was like, wow. And I kind of looked up like that and I could see it. I was like, yeah, that's really interesting. But then I was just thrown into this human experience of like, what now? So then that kind of like overshadowed it really until moments later, like years later, when I actually realized that I was like, damn, that was a lot, you know? I saw that energy. I was at the dentist and I was having like a tooth pulled, and it was really, really brutal. Like it was really awful. It had been going on an hour. The dentist couldn't get the tooth out. It was just horrendous. They were like in my head constantly. It was going on for an hour, and I just was laying there back going, I need this to be over with. And it was at that moment I said, Mum, if you're there, please make this stop. Like I've had enough. And I said, make this stop. I've had enough. It's really brutal. I said, oh, and by the way, I said, you never did show me that sign of a scorpion I asked for, right? And I kind of laughed in my head. Anyway, literally 5 minutes later, they got a male dentist in who had a bit more strength, and he's like, anyway, whatever, right? And it was over. And you know, we cleaned up, and I went out to reception and paid the bill. And the receptionist pulls up as she pulls the FPOS machine over to me, her sleeve comes down and there's a tattoo of a scorpion on her arm.
Oh my.
You know? And I was like, I said to her, I was like, do you want to hear a funny story? She was like, sure. And I was like, wow. And I think she was just like, I don't know how she felt, but I was just like, I'm going to tell you anyway, because it's cool, you know? So all these like little coincidences, you know, there's plenty more, like, you know, there's so much more. But I think, you know, it just proves that there is a continuation of consciousness.
Yeah, and I think for me, a lot of it is, you know, it's important, you know, that we are able to, if we can, tune into whenever we're going through situations. It's hard, it's not easy, because we're maybe in panic or suffering or grief or whatever, depending on the situation that we're going through. But there's always spirit speaking to us. And that's from my own experience, because I went through a situation in my life where I was being choked to death. And then it wasn't until I surrendered and accepted that I was going to die and just let it happen. Because it was the worst, you know, I was going to fight and then fight until my death, you know, and the more I fought, the more they did it, you know. And so when I just was like in an acceptance and just surrendered, I could hear spirit. Spirit said, just play dead. And that was the response. And so when I did, then he stopped. And then because he believed, you know, that I was dead. And so he walked away. But I think there is always spirit there guiding us, or whether it's our higher selves or whatever the case may be. You can call it angels, source, God, higher self. But there's always guidance there. And I think that it's not always that we have to ask, because in those situations we're not really asking. You know, we're kind of too busy with the situation to really ask, you know, unless we actually do. But in that situation, I wasn't asking for help. I was just in panic mode, right? So I think if we can make that space in our chaotic situations or whatever the case may be, you know, we can sit and listen, then we can hear the higher consciousness, you know, what to do in those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just about, you know, like you say, like tuning in, and people are like, how do I do that? And it's like, if you do the work, you know, you just tune in, just listening, and just, you know, once you kind of like go deeper into yourself, you start really listening to what's coming through. And you realize that there's just a little bit, there's a higher energy here, you know, and just listening to those thoughts and those messages that are coming in. And they really can help guide us, you know.
Most definitely. And can you give us some scenarios or tips on self-love? What does that actually look like? Like, what are some methods that we can use to practice self-love?
Yeah, look, with anyone that's going through grief or, you know, just a difficult time, it really is about giving, you know, allowing yourself some grace, finding something, what fills you up, what makes you what generally makes you happy, what that could be. It really could be whatever. It could, if meditation makes you feel good, then go with that. If it's going for a swim, do that. If it's painting, do that. Really just honoring yourself and finding something that you love. You can set aside, just even 20 minutes of the day to do something just entirely just for you. It could be going to get a coffee at your local cafe, just sitting there on your own, looking at, just people watching, whatever it might be. But and then you just get deeper into it, right? And you're like, right, I'm going to prioritize sleep. I'm going to look at all these different things that actually go into kind of affecting my life. And sleep is huge. I mean, you got to get good sleep, which I know can be really difficult for some people. Depending on the situation, you might, have traumatic events that have led you to not feel safe when sleeping. Or you could have children that they don't want to sleep, and I totally get that. I've been there, and hopefully coming out the other side. Sleep's huge, but just that self-love, really honoring yourself. You have to prioritize, yourself, and otherwise, like, it affects everyone around you, right? And again, it's just like choosing the life that you want to lead in the future and making choices to go that way, So I'm big on self-love. I'm more so big on prioritizing you and setting healthy boundaries. That's what I'm really passionate about, is just creating healthy boundaries, not underbounding, not overbounding, not being too overprotective on yourself, not being a doormat, just somewhere in the middle where you're just like, this is the healthy boundaries I'm inserting into my life to what's right for me, and, live my life the way that I want to, unapologetically and authentically. Important is to be really authentic with who you are. When you find authenticity and you're authentic with yourself, your life will change. It really will.
Yep, and I agree. And, working on self-love, sometimes I have to remind myself because I forget to. I get so busy, and I think a lot of people will as well, depending on what's going on. But it's always bringing ourselves back, trying to remember and to remind ourselves.
You have to remind yourself, you're like, you know what? I haven't done anything for me lately. I've just been on autopilot. I've just been, just like working this, all just like the, things that we have to do to kind of, make life work, but what have I done for me lately that's actually, filling my cup and making me, a happier person.
Yeah. And then if you wanted to go ahead and do the meditation, I believe you had thought of doing one that was focused on self-love.
I did write a meditation like just for this, but I changed it, and I didn't do it on self-love in the end. I done it on kind of like, I made it on kind of like anxiety and grief in the end. I don't know why. Maybe I just changed it because I thought that somebody needed to hear that today. So, perfect. And I changed the meditation because I had this idea that came through, and I was like, this is going to be perfect. Self-love and compassion, like everything I do is based around compassion. The mindfulness meditation, yes, of course, there's a compassion part to that, absolutely, about honoring, yourself and what you're feeling, right? And I'm all about, you have to love yourself. You have to have that love for yourself in its entirety, and it's good and bad, like you say, and its shadow parts as well. But yeah, I did write a little 3-minute mindfulness meditation for your followers today, based on, maybe it was a message that came through, I don't know, but it's for anyone that's going through like a hard, difficult time. This might help them to see it from a different angle, possibly.
Perfect. Yeah, if you want to go ahead and we'll get ready for the meditation.
So I wrote this for you guys. So this is like, it's literally just 3 minutes, okay? This could be like, just for a little taster for people. It's short on time, but it's just to kind of like get you into kind of like just winding down. So people might, if they're going to listen to this, maybe like grab a pen and paper, because afterwards you can jot down what's come up for you, because I'll ask you a question after, so people can jot this down. They can think about it and jot it down after.
Okay.
So this is what I like to do with like little meditations, is to really ask yourself a couple of questions after to see what you got from this. So this is for anyone that's been through kind of like, a bit of a difficult time or in a grief situation. So what I do, just bring it up. So it's a mindfulness. This is a mindfulness technique and a journal afterwards. So it's only 3 minutes long, and it's just about finding a space in a comfortable position where we take 3 minutes to rest and connect with our body, mind, and soul. And be open to receiving what our body is telling us. So have your paper and pen handy. And so please find a comfortable position, seated or laying down. And gently close your eyes, soften your jaw, relax your eye area, and allow your body to relax and follow along to the sound of my voice. So take a big, deep breath in, slowly exhale. Take another big breath, just in and out, creating a rhythm with your breath and allowing your body to fully relax into the chair or the bed or whatever you're sitting on. So bring your attention inward, noticing that there may be fear or anxiety present right now. Don't try to make it go away or suppress it. Imagine fear or the feeling of anxiety to be an object in front of you, not necessarily frightening or threatening, just something you can focus on and observe for the purpose of this exercise. It could be a cloud, could be a rock, could even be an anchor. Like whatever comes up for you is right. So allow yourself to recognize what you are feeling exists because you care deeply, because something and someone matters to you. Focusing on your object and your rhythm of breath. Every time you breathe out, imagine softening around the fear, like loosening your grip, not pushing it away. Now bring your attention to your body. Notice if the feeling of anxiety is being held anywhere in your body. Maybe it's in your belly or your chest area. Allow it to be there and give it space to be there without it being dominating. Gently sit with it and breathe a few rounds, letting any feelings coexist. Take some deep breaths and some long exhales. Take some deep breaths and some long exhales, and just keeping that rhythm of breath going. Now gently remind yourself the following. Grief is a natural human response. This is a fear mixed with love. Grief is not a failure of strength. And remind yourself that you're allowed to feel love for yourself and others. And remind yourself that in this moment, you are safe. And keep breathing. And slowly, when you are ready, move your fingers and toes. And when you feel ready, Open your eyes, come back into the room. Just be gentle with yourself. When you're ready, grab your pen and paper. You don't have to write it down. You can reflect in your mind. And reflect on these questions when doing that little exercise. Like, what did you notice about the fear or anxiety when viewing it as an object rather than a sensation or feeling? Notice, where did the fear or anxiety show up in your body in this exercise? You know, where did you feel that? And importantly, if you could offer yourself one piece of reassurance right now, what would it be? And I'll leave you with that. And hopefully people can, you know, get what they needed to. I really hope that landed with someone, and I feel like it did, because I pinpointed it for someone that needed to hear it. So those little exercises can really help, you know, just get a different perspective on things, you know, viewing it from different angles, asking yourself the questions to reflect on after. And it's really good to, yes, you can use your mind to reflect, but also I feel like when you write it down, you can look at those notes, you know, in say a couple of years' time, and you look at it, you're like, wow, is that how I felt? That's really interesting. Like, you could have made so much more progress from then, and you'd be like, wow, things have changed, you know.
Thank you for the meditation. That was beautiful. And hopefully everybody enjoys that and does have a takeaway from it.
Absolutely, for sure, right? It's like really kind of, you know, get into it, lay down, get fully relaxed, and it's just a great mindfulness exercise. It really is. But let's say grab your notebook and pen for after. What was I going to say? Yeah, and of course, you know, this is just if people are new to this style of work, 3 minutes is just so 2.5, 3 minutes is really not much. And then that can just, like, if that works for you and you felt like you got something from it, you can maybe do things that are a little bit longer, maybe 5 minutes, depending on how much time you have, you know. And it really will help to just slow the body down.
Now, is there a place that they can go to your website, that you have other meditations that they can listen to or practice?
So, like, on my website, if you head to my website, there's, like, under task sheets, there's like task sheets there that you can either screenshot or just save. Or you can go to my Instagram, in the highlights there's the task sheets. I do them quarterly, so it's just like kind of like the self-help. It just tides people over to like the next session kind of thing. And this is like creates confidence, self-esteem, and resilience, you know, just like little exercises, metaphors, just little, you know, a bit of help there. So the task sheets are there. I don't have any meditations up, but in the new year, the website is being redone as we speak, and there'll be courses up there. There'll be mainly for clients, but there'll be a practitioner one as well eventually, and but mainly for clients that can, you know, follow along at their own self pace. So that'll be coming up, and there will be meditations being put up then, but that's not going to happen until probably February. But it will be more of a resource center, so it's still being built right now, and I'm writing a lot for it, and it's been a lot of healing again for me. I've had to write and delve deep into, you know, connecting with all these different grief categories, and yeah, it's been cathartic. I've revisited, but in a good way, because now I know how to, you know, deal with all these and seeing things from a different perspective and using different techniques that I've learned as well over the years, because we're always learning, right? It's always something. It's like, I want to, you know, that could be really useful for me. Actually, I might learn that. And it just brings another difference to your sessions, which so I've been integrating all that into my life as well. So yeah, everyone, you can go to my website, go to my Instagram. There's always things on there being updated. Like, you know, we do weekend wise words every week. Every week there'll be, you know, just like this little short snippet life advice. So there'll be like things for, you know, coming up for Christmas. It's going to be a hard time for people, obviously. There's plenty of, there's so much on my feed on Instagram that people can just go through to find, some kind of like just some mental kind of like support, because it's very hard for people to reach out, like just very private, this kind of work. So it's better to kind of have a resource rather than, really reaching out to someone. People do reach out, but, it takes people a lot to do that. So just having that resource to kind of go to and, flick through everything, I mean, I didn't have all that, like 20 years ago. And, this is what's so great about the internet, right? It's that, 20 years ago, I didn't have all this. And like, it's taken me like that long to really come to where I am now. Whereas maybe if I had all that kind of like help that I could instantly access, like all those years ago, I would have kind of like healed quicker, if you like, or, it's, I went the long way around, but that's okay, because, we didn't have the resources back then like we do now. And that's why hopefully as a society we're becoming a bit more aware and compassionate because we have all this information, and that's why we again can't keep blaming our parents because they didn't have any of this. It just was not they didn't know how to deal with kind of grief and trauma. They really didn't. I'm not saying we need to excuse people's behaviors, but they really, I feel like they didn't have they don't have the resources like we do now,
Right. Is there any last topics that you would like to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
Oh, no. Oh, do you know what? Maybe one actually. And do you know what? I was really, just to leave people on this note, is thinking of like when it came into my head when I was thinking about talking to you today, is like, how time is just not linear, right? Now, I've always thought to myself, because I've had so many different experiences with like, spirit or deja vu that people might call it, and I've been like, I've never thought as time is linear. And I was thinking last night, you know what? I really feel like just if we look at it in a different perspective, and like I've seen like the, the spiral theory, if people look up the spiral theory of time, like you're leading all these different paths. Yeah. But you've walked, as you're going up this spiral, there's so many encounters and experiences. They're all very, very close together, and just the cyclical kind of like aspect of life, with the weather and like, moons and your menstrual cycle, all these cycles that come into play. Think of it more of as a spiral, looking at the cyclical kind of like aspects of life, like with water coming up, clouds, precipitation, coming back down, everything's in a cycle, and that kind of ties in again with encounters with like kind of afterlife, with time and dimension, that's another thing that really I'll delve into again at some point later on down the track when I've got time, but find it really fascinating.
And as part of your legacy, where do you see the work that you're doing going for the future?
I just hope to see my work going to a place where people can use my website as a resource and they're anonymous, they can use it, they can do the courses, they can do the exercises, and they can be anonymous, but they can get good results, without, so you can get good quality kind of like exercises, counseling, without having to really sit down with someone. Like, yes, that 100% will help if you sit down, but making that initial, it's basically making it easier for people to kind of access good quality kind of like therapy, counseling. That's where I want it to go. So people can actually, live a more fulfilling life, because grief can be really, really hard. And when you hear other people's stories and you're dealing, you're talking to someone or you're going through a course where someone's been through like the same as you, like it just brings a level of comfort, so the work I see myself doing is just making my website a resource for, just using what's happened in my life to assist others in their healing journey. That's what it's really all about. And then I'm there for people if they need one-on-ones, to do whatever work they want to do.
Perfect. And are your sessions online or do you also do them in person?
I actually do online. I do online because I found that it's just what people want now. With this kind of work, especially when dealing with like grief and trauma, it's people feel safe in their own home. You know, you're on a computer screen. It's like if it gets a bit too much, they can go. You know, it's just having that get out. You know, of being like, oh, you know what? It's like this. It's just a bit easier. It's safer for that. And until maybe I don't know. I don't have. I used to do in person, but it was just too much cool for online. I was just like, there's no point. Everyone just wants online, and that's fine. And we still get the same results from doing this work online.
And thank you for doing the work that you do and for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
A lovely chat with you, and yeah, have a great evening there in Florida.
Let's talk about death, baby. Let's talk about you and me. We're not the one and only. It's going to happen to everybody. Yeah, baby. Say it isn't so, baby. It's the truth.